Hello, my name is Chanel and today I'm doing the Deck Delights and Deterrents. It's VR Peekaboo Rose. So this is all about what delights me in a deck and what deters me in decks. So first up I'm going to talk about cardstock, and I'm going to do it by showing my favorite cardstock. This is the Lucid Dreamers Saint Soleil Beginner's Deck. I absolutely adore matte linen cardstock. I don't know if you can see the texture in this, but it's gorgeous. It's my favorite in terms of how it feels, how it shuffles, how it looks. It's amazing. I also love when the gilding is matte like this one, and not, I'm going to show you my least favorite type of gilding, and that's this bitch. The really shining one that chips so easily. Like, I barely used this deck and it's already chipped and it just like hurts my hands. I hate that shiny shit. I love the matte gilding. That is my favorite, and here's another example of the matte. Besides the gold, it also comes in other colors like black, but I have a feeling that's going to get chipped up. But I also like the holographic gilding. I think that's really cool too, you know, like the silver ones that turn rainbow. That's lovely. I also don't mind matte cardstock. So the Spacious Tarot is an example of matte cardstock that I really like. I think that feels grand. I don't really like shiny. Once again, I'm going to bring out the Beltane. He's not really got the holographic, but it's glossy cardstock. I'm not a fan of glossy cardstock. It obviously reflects, it slips and slides everywhere. So I'm not a fan of gloss. I'm not a fan of some glossy linens. So some glossy linens are fine, like the Gentle Tarot is a great one, but the Playful Heart Tarot just could not stay in my hands. It kept going all over the place, sliding everywhere, and I don't like having my cards reversed. So every single time that would happen, I'd have to put them in order, and that just did my absolute head in. Something that I do like with cards, I love foiling. So this is an example of some gold foiling on the front. I think that's beautiful. I'm, to be honest, not a fan of borders. This one, it works because this has information. It's a beginner's deck. You've got the symbols, you've got the keywords, so that's fine. Generally, I do not like borders. I prefer borderless decks. I think there'd be very few instances where I didn't mind a border, but normally I will end up trimming a deck if it has a big border. The cardstock that is rose petal, sometimes I like it because it's a big variance with rose petal. Like, for instance, the True Black Tarot, that's gorgeous. That doesn't stick together, it shuffles well, it feels beautiful, it doesn't mark too much. I love the True Black, but I've had other rose petal decks that just stick and you cannot shuffle them. And shuffling is how I pick my cards. My least favorite, though, of all time that I've ever had is from the Messages from the Heart of the Divine. So that's this one. It's this, it's like cardboard, like actual paper and cardboard, but it's got this chalky feel to it, and I hate how it feels on my hands. I love this deck. I love the artwork and the images. I hate the cardstock, and I actually am thinking, I don't know if I'm going to keep this deck just because I don't bring it out, because I don't want to touch it. Another deterrent for me is Roman numerals. I hate this. I don't want to have to sit there and dedicate precious brain power to figuring out, okay, is that 28? I know, like, you can figure it out, but I just don't like doing it. And especially too, if I have to, in the guidebook, also look it up by the Roman numeral. I hate Roman numerals. I'm just going to say it. Please don't use them. So I think that's everything in terms of, I don't really like the thick card stock either. That sort of like, I would say, the Moonchild Tarot. It's that cardboard, satin, thick card stock. I don't like it when it's too thick. I find it hard to shuffle. It makes the deck massive. It doesn't bend. So I'm not a fan. I do like satin. Satin's a great cardstock. That's sort of that in-between gloss, in-between matte. I think that feels luscious. Like a lot of the Blue Angel decks are that. So look at that lovely gold. Size, this is like a perfect size. I like this size very much. I also love little itty bitty mini decks. So this is the Sparkly Lenormand. I love mini pocket-sized decks. I wish there were more pocket-sized decks. Oh, this is like a matte satin cardstock, and it came with a pink matte gilding. So this is beautiful. I wish a lot of decks had the option to be pocket-sized. I do find though that when they do that, they tend to not include the guidebook. And there's nothing I hate more than like a PDF guidebook. I don't use it. I'm not going to go on my phone or on my computer to look up a bloomin' PDF guidebook. So we're going to talk about guidebooks now. This is bullshit. This is the roots and wings, and this is all it comes with. It comes with a pamphlet. There is like nothing in here about the artwork, about why they chose those images. It's very, very basic, basic messages. Rise out of the ashes, taking the first steps after darkness, finding your wings in a new dawn. Okay, great. Like, it's not enough. This is not enough for me. I have come to realize that I absolutely must have a, what do you call it? This is a Spacious Tarot. We're just going to go have a look at this. I edged mine. This is matte. This is that lovely matte. I must have a really great guidebook that is absolutely essential for me. I going forward, I'm not going to purchase anything that doesn't have a substantial guidebook. I don't want to just sit there with my intuition, and I find that I think the same things most of the time, same words even. I like to get that fresh perspective, that new hit, that sort of innovative, inspirational, alternative message, just a different viewpoint, a different perspective. So guidebooks are very important to me. There's great ones. I actually have a whole video based on some of my favorite guidebooks. It's called Got It for the Guidebooks, where I showcase some really amazing ones. Dream Keepers is one that comes to mind. That is absolutely delightful to read. The Alchemist Garden Tarot, that's almost poetic or lyrical. It's like a story being told. So I don't like it when decks have crappy guidebooks. Also, like the Playful Heart Tarot. Oh, I could not read that. Even though it was more substantial than a booklet, just the language that was used and the way it was written, I couldn't stand it. Did not like it. So that's the thing. Normally, in decks, I hate pips. I will never have just a pip deck, ever, ever, ever. I can't stand them. This deck is probably my most pippish deck, but at least it has it's got some scenery around it. They're not all the same, just with a different number of cups, for instance. So this is like the exception for me. This is the most pippish deck I would ever have. So you see what I mean? Like, at least there's like an atmospheric difference to it. There's a different energy coming from this than there is that. Like, you can see the tone is very different when it's illustrated differently. So it's still quite pippish. I'm not gonna lie. Like, this Four of Wands one, I'm not a really big fan of it. Four of Wands is one of my favorite cards, and I just don't feel like that's great, to be honest. But like I said, I like the theme, this size of this deck, the quality, the cardstock. I like the theme. Speaking of themes, I tend to go more for nature decks. So anything that has plants, animals, sort of nature elements. I also like, I guess, celestial, anything with like a celestial theme, anything with a feminine theme. They tend to be like my favorite, I guess, themes for decks. I love this full. This is so beautiful. Oh, I can feel that. So in terms of themes, I don't like anything that's got violence, like a lot of violence or gore, or that is just really dark and disturbing. No, I don't. I went through a massive, like, when I was a kid, I was a goth, and I was all into horrors and that dark and heavy stuff. And I know after having kids, I just didn't want that in my life anymore. I just wanted my life to be mostly filled with light and joy. And you know, still there's some like darkness, but not. I don't want to delve that deeply into it. Like, I don't want to be confronted by an image on a tarot deck. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is like supposed to be a fun time, getting a message across. I don't want to be too aghast at some bloody violent massacre depicted on a card. That's, no, I'd rather a different slant, a different artistic depiction. So yeah, like things like, I think the Deviant Moon, not for me at all whatsoever. No, thank you. I also like ones that tend to be more hand-drawn rather than computer-generated. I do prefer the hand-drawn art, personally. What else? I also don't like it, though, a lot, like, when they change the names of the suits. So, like, in the Dreamy Moons, for instance, the crystals are swords and the stars are pentacles, and I hate that. I don't like having to learn that sort of stuff. There's also instances like in this one where the kings, queens, pages, and knights are called different things, like I think guardian, root, stuff like that. And I get, unless I'm using a deck a lot, I'm going to have to keep referencing the guidebook to refresh my memory, like, wait, what's this one? So I tend to not like ones that have different, here we go, Guardian of Swords, names to them, personally. Don't like it. What else? Oh, here we go. I also don't like oversized decks. Oh, sorry guys, I am a klutz. This is the Begin Oracle, which is one of my absolute favorites. I hate how big it is. It is so big and it's very hard to shuffle. This would have absolutely set my heart on fire if it was pocket size. Oh my God, I would keep this in my purse. Also too, if the guidebook was a reasonable size, but the guidebook is bigger than A4. So I can't take that bitch anywhere. Like, I cannot. I would have loved a little book and a little pocket-sized deck, and this would have lived with me and gone on travels because I love it so much. I love the messages. I like the collage style. I like the themes. It's just fantastic. Sorry about that, guys. My timer went off because I'm baking a pecan cheesecake for my partner's grandmother's 90th birthday. So I had to go turn that off. And I've forgotten what I was saying. But yeah, I don't really like over-the-top borders, personally. What else? Sometimes I tend to not like really over photo manipulated, I know this is photo manipulated work, like especially if it's cheesy. So for instance, an example of that would be, I think it's a 7 Energies, I can't remember the name, I'll put the name up. It's just so cheesy. It's got a lot of like Fabio dudes in it, and normally I don't like that kind of art per se. What else do I want to go to? So I'll also give an example of backs that don't match the fronts. So these are the backs. This is the energetics of color. Okay, these are the backs, which I hate because the fronts, this whole deck, its theme is colors. This is a theme all about color and energies associated with colors. And so to have like a black, I guess, I don't know why they went that way. I just don't think it suits. I just don't like the backs at all. They're so dark and gloomy and basic, when the actual cards themselves are not only vibrant, but just the style is so over the top. It doesn't make sense to me. So there's a few decks that have backs that do not match. Like another one is the Ethereal Alchemist Tarot, I think that's what it's called, and it's got like an Egyptian sort of theme. The photo collage style is very reminiscent of like Rebecca Campbell and Danielle Knoll decks, but the backs are just pale pink and white chevron pattern, and I'm like, what? Doesn't match. So, but for instance, I do love it when backs of decks do match. I'm going to show you one of my favorites of all time. So here we've got the Threads of Fate Lumen. I love the aesthetics of this deck. This is stunning, and you've got, like I said, the foiling, you've got the mats. It's a satin cardstock, and it just, like, these backs suit the fronts so well. This is such a beautiful deck. It's also got like a holographic sort of background. This is just like the epitome of beauty to me. I absolutely adore everything about this deck. It's one of my favorites of all time in terms of aesthetics, even also theme and meaning and use. It's a great one and I love it. So I would also say that I don't like a lot of packaging. It really upsets me when a deck comes, it's like shrink wrapped in package in plastic, and then you open it up and then like the deck's wrapped in plastic, and then sometimes there's like boxes in boxes, which does my head in. So I hate the overly packaged decks. I'm like, you know, take it easy, bro. Like, don't need to cover everything in plastic. This reminds me of those pictures you see sometimes of like some supermarkets and they've wrapped like individual bananas in plastic, you know? And I'm like, well, why? Why must you? Just because you can doesn't mean you should. That being said, I don't like tuck boxes. They just rip, I just rip them every single time I try and get them out. I'm just like, there goes that box instantly. But I also just don't tend to keep a lot of boxes in general. I tend to make little bags, which I much prefer. It's like a little ritual I have with my decks. Once I've decided to keep them, I make them a little home. But yeah, I think the packaging thing can be done better. Some people, you know, they bind the cards with just like a ring of paper, which is way better. And yeah, I think they can do better with the packaging. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Like, I think that's about it. It's a learning process, I think, finding out what you like and what you don't like. And sometimes though, there are decks that are just so amazing, I guess, in one way, that they compensate for maybe horrible cardstock or like crappy artwork or poor guidebooks. So sometimes there are exceptions to the rules, I will admit. But also I have like a much better handle on what I think will be a successful deck match for me these days, after experiencing a lot of ones that like, oh, I don't like that at all. Like for instance, plastic cardstock, never again, never ever again. I don't care how cool the idea is or what it is, I cannot stand the smell of plastic, number one. Two, I don't like how it feels. And then three, it's plastic, it's bad for the environment. So I purchased one knowing it was plastic, and then I purchased a second deck not knowing it was plastic, and both times I have rehomed those decks because I just thought, no, I can't do it. I cannot do it. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else. No, I think that's everything. So those are all of my deck delights and deterrents. I hope you're having a delightful morning, afternoon, or evening wherever you are. And as always, stay wild, Star Child.